You are listening to Insights with Kathleen. Please join me while I share my insights and experiences with the hope to inspire you to look inside of yourself for the answers that you already have. As with all information we receive, take what speaks to you and leave the rest.
Hey, Chery. So,
hey guys, welcome to the show.
Yes, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us. So, check in, Cher.
Check in?
I'm going to check in with you.
You're going to check in with me. How nice
so
of
you've
you.
been home for what, about 2 weeks now?
Yes, about 2 weeks.
And we were talking about some of those transitional pieces
right.
last podcast,
yes.
right?
Yes, we were.
So how you doing? How's it going?
It's been interesting.
Yeah.
It's been interesting. Quick note, guys. I had a little bit of a breakdown before this episode, so that's how I'm doing. Yeah, I didn't realize that I was feeling the way I was feeling. I just got symptoms of like, why am I getting more migraines? Why does my body ache so much? And then I had a big cry, and we kind of talked about it a little bit. A lot of it.
Yeah, and the pieces we were talking about, it's not something we want to broadcast, right?
No.
But what we did talk about, and I thought that this might be helpful, or actually Chery thought it would be helpful for our listeners, if we talked about behavior a little bit.
Oh, yes. I did like when you were getting into that.
Yeah, so so the situation of being this young adult who's come back, and we're going to set this up a little bit.
Right, let's do that.
So you're a young adult returning from a year, well, we're calling it a year.
Essentially
it's
a year
like,
of school.
a good few months away from school, and you're coming home for the summer.
Right.
And before you left, there was a certain pattern in the family, like a certain way that everyone related to everyone.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you go away to college and you realize, oh, you know what? I'm finding pieces of myself. I love being away from my family in the sense that I get to experience me and what I like.
Right.
And how I like to be without this influence in my face, saying, I'm sorry, Lily wants to get her 2 cents in here too.
What do you guys say, Lily?
Anyway, so without having that outside familial influence in your face saying, oh no, but you're this, and oh no, you need to behave this way.
Yeah.
You're at college, you get to be you. You're brand new. No one knows you. So you get to be who you think you are.
Right.
Outside of the judgments of the family.
Yes.
Right? So now you're being this awesome person. We're just going to assume you're being an awesome person.
I am awesome, guys.
Well, we know that you are. So you're feeling it out. You're liking it. You like this level of independence. You like feeling free.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
That's very fair to say.
Free. So now you come home and you have this sense of, I'm free. Yay.
Beautiful.
I get to be me.
That's exactly what I'm singing every time.
So you come home and they're real happy to see you.
Right.
And probably the first few days, it's probably like real exciting. It's like you're the aunt or uncle that they don't ever get to see.
Right. That's a good way to put it.
We're going to put the dog on for you, and we're all on our best behavior. And then life hits.
Oof. Yeah. Yes. I didn't know about that. They didn't tell me about that.
And then all of a sudden, these old patterns are coming back.
Yes.
And then you, as an individual who, had stepped away for months and found this other way of being that you really enjoyed, now you're finding yourself face to face with who you were before you left.
Right.
Because you were this new person coming home from school. But now the family pressure, the way the family dynamics are and the energies there, it's really almost strong-arming you. I'm not saying that people are strong-arming you.
Right, the energy.
As much as it's the energy or the behaviors, the dynamics.
Right.
Because let's face it.
Let's
face it. The family you left, they didn't change.
I did not realize that until you said it, and I was like, oh, wait, what?
You changed.
I didn't realize that.
So you, dear college student who went away to school, whether it was your first year away, your second year, or your fourth year away,
right?
When you come home, they didn't change, you did. So when you feel that contrast, that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Right? So if we're able to keep that in mind, that, this is what this contrast is about. This is what this disconnect is. I'm the one who changed. I developed new views, new ideas through my experiences that my family did not participate in.
Yes. They didn't come with me to college.
No. And those experiences help shape you.
Right.
Because through those experiences, you got to pick and choose what you liked, what you didn't like, how you wanted to be, how you definitely didn't want to be.
Right.
You know? But now coming home, your family still has this expectation that you are the same person that you were when you left.
Yes.
Yes. So there's your contrast.
Yes.
There's your conflict even, right?
Reaching an impasse, yeah.
So again, depending on your relationship with your parents, I do recommend having an open, honest conversation. And sometimes that's hard.
It's a little hard.
It's a little hard.
It's a little hard.
But sometimes it's about maybe just calling out a behavior. Like I do not recommend anybody attacking their parents by saying, Mom, Dad, you suck. You know, when you do that.
Maybe if I was 14 talking like that.
You know. I don't know. But maybe what you could say is, hey, Mom, Dad, when this happens, I feel this way.
Right.
Right?
Yes, that's a big one. Because I think for me, when I was talking with you about it earlier, I think I was like, oh, yeah, I got to definitely put a mental note to like talk about it. And then all of this stuff piled up. And then I was so overwhelmed. And I'm like, how do I address this in a concise manner that's not like, well, remember last week when you did this? And remember when you kind of talked about that? I guess I was having issue trying to reconcile and put that into one thing. And then I got overwhelmed. And then I'm like, I'm just going to avoid it altogether. I'm just going to walk at parks or something. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I guess that was something I was trying to work through.
Right. So what you're referencing is specifics, like all of these other little specifics, right?
Right.
But they're behaviors. When you lump them all together, they're probably the same behavior. Right? So you want to address the behavior, but then maybe have an example in case they're like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. You know, then you can have an example. So like when this thing happened, you know, like this, and then they can go, oh. And sometimes some parents may just like flip back out on you. Flip on you, right? And they may be mad and scream and yell, how dare you? Like I remember my dad doing that to me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You know? Yeah. But he didn't throw me out of the house. And what is the worst that could happen? They throw you out. Okay. You know, for some people, I'm sure
Kathleen. I don't think no one wants that.
No one wants it.
Right.
But I think if we stay in fear of it, then we stay trapped.
Yeah, and that's even worse.
It is. So I found that if I just look at what is my worst case scenario, right? Because the dynamics where I grew up, they were horrible. You know, and my parents are good people. They're nice people, but they themselves had horrible upbringings. I mean, they had atrocious upbringings, at least from my perspective. And I'm amazed at the people that they've become because they are decent human beings.
Yeah.
I mean, but they relate in a very odd way. My parents taught us passive-aggressive behaviors.
Right.
You know, that this is how you relate to another one. You know, hey, when my parents were, and we've said this before, my parents weren't talking, they'd send my sister or I to run messages back and forth. They could be in the same great room, just different ends. They could easily hear each other, and they could easily hear the one stating to one of the children to go deliver this message. Like they could hear that all going down.
Right.
But they're still doing this ploy, which is just really horrible for those poor kids. I can say that. I lived through that. But the thing is I survived it, right? And I'm mindful not to repeat the pattern. Break the generational pattern.
Yes. I think that's it for me as well. Like along with like confronting the issue and having that conversation. But it's also part of me that's like a little disappointed and judging me a little bit. Like I don't want to go into those old patterns. Oh my goodness. I got to do something about it. So I'm also worried about that.
Right.
I don't want to backslide.
And again, that becomes a fear.
Right.
So look at what is it. Before you do anything, take a moment, take a breath. What am I afraid of? Why am I afraid of having this transparent conversation? and list that out. What is the fear? I mean, because I'm sure that some of the people that are listening, their situation with their parental figures may be a lot more precarious.
Right.
And then so they'll have to weigh out what can they really do.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of it has to do with how you see it.
Right.
Meaning that, yes, we know that the behavior is not good. Let's just say that.
Right.
The behavior that's happening, that the parental figure is displaying, is not a good behavior for anyone. It's not healthy.
Right.
But I, as the young adult, I need to size it up. This is part of being an adult, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
Tubas and whoever else is listening. It's about sizing up your situation.
Right.
And then, addressing to yourself, what are your deep-seated fears here? What is the worst that could possibly happen? And once you know what the worst is that could possibly happen, you come up with a little bit of a plan that empowers you.
Right.
And then you take the first step. Right? And you know your parents just as well as they know you.
Right.
You know how far you can go with it.
Yes.
So, and most of you listening, your parents love you. They may not always behave that way, but ultimately they do love you. And sometimes calling them out on a behavior, not saying, you know what, Mom, you suck, but just saying, hey, when this happens, I feel this way. Is there a way that we can change that? Because if you did it this way, this would be so much better for me. Or is there something I can do? We can meet in the middle.
Right. That is a big one, because I don't even think I realized how I'm saying things. So if I am attacking the person, I'm like, oh, well, I thought I'm just calling out the behavior, but no, I'm just calling out that person, and then they get defensive, and then it's a whole thing. So that does feel more loving to be like, hey, this behavior is something that I feel did not
when you
resonate.
do this thing.
Yeah.
When this thing happens, these are all the different ways you can say it. And if you really feel lost and struggled, there are resources, and I encourage anybody who's listening, do seek out the resources.
Right.
Find a third party who isn't so vested and who could be that sounding board for you, who can help you.
Right.
Even if it means bringing somebody in for the conversation.
Right.
And to help mediate it a little bit if you really feel that that's something that's necessary. But trust me, most of you could just really have that conversation with your parent, and my goodness, they'll see you in a different way. I remember having one of my very first transparent, well, actually, there was a series. So I think when I was younger, I was not so wise in how to really phrase things to get the best results. But I remember an incident where my dad was watching something I felt was so very inappropriate to be watching in the family room when he has two young adult daughters who could come in at any point in time. Right. And I kind of very judgmentally ripped him apart about it. And then he got mad and chased me all the way up the stairs in the hallway. And we had a tiff in the hallway, right before I hit my bedroom. And we were yelling at each other. Now, mind you, my dad, I was always afraid of my dad because he's a really tall man who had a very booming voice and, was always emotional in that way and yelling when he would get frustrated and mad. And here I am just still standing in the full might of my little self and looking up at him, yelling right back at him because I felt so justified in my judgment. Right. Now, was that the best way to handle that? Probably not. But as the years go by and we grow and we learn. So I'm hoping that sharing this, this experience, this insight, that I help you all get there a little faster, right? Yeah. Because time went by where, something else happened and, I had an honest conversation and he started seeing me very differently. I was amazed. He, something else came up and I just kind of put it to him. All right. So the relationship with him and my mom was always a very turbulent one. They loved each other a lot. Right. But they got into this bad pattern of doing this, having this passive aggressive type relationship where they kept giving their power away to the other. So it was just this endless circle of going nowhere. Right. In their relationship. And my mom had passed away, and one of my siblings had said to my dad that my mom had done something that shocked him and hurt him, right? And he was so upset, and he was obsessing over it, that a friend of his called me on the phone and says, "Oh, I'm really worried about your dad because he really seems down and depressed." And they asked me to come over, so I did, and I'm talking with, like, he's outside, so he smokes. So I'm outside, and as he's smoking, I'm like, "So Dad, what's up?" Oh. And he's telling me, and you can see he's just so mad and frustrated. And then he says, "And she's dead, so I can't even, like, tell her about it. Never tell her about it and have that conversation with her." And he's getting more and more mad. And I looked at him and I said, "So Dad, before you found this news out,
right,
were you happy? Was life okay? Were you happy? You know?" "Yeah." I said, "Okay, so why does this change that?" That's something, that information that you received is something that happened way before she died. And you had related with her many years after that. And just because you're finding it out now, how does that change? How does that change you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I looked at him. I said, "You know what? You have a choice here. You can continue this spiral and be a miserable nit, or you can take a breath and just remember how happy you were before you heard this news, because this news doesn't change anything." He cocked his head. He looked at me funny. Now, mind you, yes, I was a full-grown adult having this conversation with him.
Yes.
But when you grow up in fear of your parent,
right,
this is still pretty bold, because you carry those things, right?
Yeah.
And then he's like, "Huh." And I'm like, "Right?" And then, he thanked me, and which my dad also didn't really do. And then I think weeks later went by, and I get this phone call, this urgent phone call from him. Kath, because that's what he calls me, Kath. So-and-so, something happened with so-and-so. You need to call them, because you just need to call them. I'm like, "I do?" And I don't really talk to this person he's referring to me. And he's like, "Yeah, because you know what? You make everybody feel better." And I was like, wow, a compliment.
I got
we
one. We
never get those. So I share the story to say, take the risk.
That does make a lot of sense, because it just shows, like, just the maturity and the, hey, I can have these conversations and be transparent with you. Also doing it in such a way that, I don't know, just feels productive. You know what I mean? I don't know. It gives them loads of respect for you.
Well, it's not just that. It made me feel powerful having the conversation, because it didn't matter what that person thought about me. Wait, what? Wait a minute, parents? I don't care what my parent thinks about me?
That's a hard one for me.
That's a hard one for everybody, honey.
Yeah.
It is. Even though for those who would say, "Oh, I don't care," trust me, on some level, it does. It still does for me too.
Right.
Because these are the people that we come into life with that teach us how to relate to people. They're also, in essence, teaching us how we relate to ourselves. And that is why that a lot of these emotional problems or issues that we perceive that we have, they really do stem from that very first relationship. And that's why we're doing what we're doing here too, is to help people see how important it is for you to have that relationship with self.
Right.
And how important it is for you to self-affirm.
Ooh,
I spent a bulk of my life looking for affirmations outside of myself.
Right.
And then what's going on in my head is directly the opposite. You suck, you're this, you're that. Well, hey, those are easy to say, but why can't I turn that around and say, hey, you know what? You're a pretty awesome person.
Yeah.
You're a loving person. You're beautiful. No matter what. Just because I may not be model beautiful, I'm still beautiful.
Yeah, you are.
Oh, thank you, sweetie.
You're welcome.
But, I mean, oh my goodness, that was just a lot we just said there, right? If our parents are our first picture into who and what we are and how to relate to ourselves.
Yes.
By the way that they relate to us and by the way that they relate to each other.
Those are big concepts you just threw out there.
I just dropped them like little bombs.
It's your seed bombs.
Yeah. So, and when we can see it from that perspective, it really opens up the world a lot more. And then when we can see that we really, truly are powerful beings as our individual self and step into that more, it will help with this.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is all temporary anyway, because life's always changing. You're always growing.
That's very true, actually. I forgot about that.
Yeah. And it is hard. And I say this to all of you young adults, even if you are an adult and whatever situation you're going through, please know that it's not a forever thing.
Right.
It will change. Especially if you let go of the fear, you work past the fear, and you step into what's healthy for you and what's right for you.
Right.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. We hope you have a good night.
Thank you for tuning in. Remember that you are bigger than anything that you are going through or anything that is happening around you.